For all its beauty and splendor, the wilderness can be a cruel teacher. In the vast expanse of the wilderness, nature is both beautiful and brutal. But beneath the surface of its serene landscapes lies a darker reality. Every year, countless adventurers venture into the wild, seeking peace, challenge, or escape. But some never return, leaving behind only questions. Here, survival isn't just about battling the elements, it's about facing the unknown. The wilderness can push even the strongest to their limits, where desperation can turn to danger. Mysterious disappearances, unexplained phenomena, and the chilling reality of what people are capable of when pushed to the edge. This is the dark side of the wilderness. Out here, they're the brutal reality that no one likes to talk about. One wrong step, one moment of weakness, and you could be the next name on a list of the dead, lost, and forgotten. And if the wild doesn't take you, the darkness within might. In the following stories, these people are pushed to the edge of human resilience, and critical mistakes are made that end with catastrophic consequences. In these isolated places, where civilization feels like a distant memory, the line between survival and savagery blurs. Let's venture back to the savage wilderness, where survival is earned, not given. This is the Outdoor Disasters, Disappearances, and Murder Mysteries Marathon. For Joseph Orbiso and Rachel Wen, their Joshua Tree visit would be a tragedy. Joseph, 21, and Rachel, 20, ex-lovers and now close friends, decided to take a mini vacation to a local iconic park, Joshua Tree. Orbiso was from Lakewood and Wen from Westminster, both suburbs south of Los Angeles, California. Within family circles, Wen answered to the nickname Diem Mai, and she was always very sweet yet really a tomboy. As a child, I gave her a doll and she told me she didn't play with dolls. She much preferred video games, so we got her a Wii. She didn't do girly things like other girls, and there was no such thing as serious dating, her aunt said. Orbiso, a security guard at a Long Beach golf course, was described to be in very good shape, was somewhat of a survivalist, and would always carry weapons when hiking. He is also the most respectful, honest, and straightforward person you will ever meet, a close friend of them said. Days leading to Wen's 20th birthday, she had a crush on a guy and asked him to join her for hiking. He turned out to be busy. He told her to go with Joseph instead, and he would see her later. Rachel and Joseph checked into an Airbnb in the high desert on Wednesday, July 26, 2017, and were excited about their Joshua Tree excursion. No one would ever see them again. Following their failure to check out as planned, Orbiso and Wen were reported missing on July 28th, when the owner of their lodging in the Morongo Basin discovered their personal belongings left in their room. The property owner promptly notified the authorities after learning that the couple had intended to hike in Joshua Tree National Park on Thursday, July 27th. Furthermore, a neighbor confirmed having witnessed their departure before 6 a.m. on that Thursday morning. By Friday, as the couple had not checked out, the property owner contacted the sheriff's department. Inside the rental unit, investigators discovered some belongings, including 4 types of hallucinogenic drugs, which strongly suggested that Orbiso and Wen had not returned from their planned hike. Notably, a ping from Orbiso's cell phone had been recorded within the park a day prior to the couple's official report as missing. Surveillance cameras positioned at the west entrance of Joshua Tree National Park captured the moment when Orbiso's vehicle, a burgundy Lexus, entered the park at 6:45 a.m. on Thursday, July 27th. Authorities subsequently located the couple's vehicle in the vicinity of a trailhead on the day they were reported missing. Footprints leading away from the car could be seen. The way the tracks were picked up indicates these people could be walking in circles, which is not uncommon when people are lost, George Land, a spokesman for Joshua Tree National Park, said. During this period, temperatures within the park had soared above 100 degrees, casting uncertainty on whether the couple possessed enough water and supplies for their journey. A search and rescue operation was initiated, mobilizing 250 resources, including aircraft, canine teams, equestrian units, and ground teams. In total, these dedicated personnel devoted over 2,100 hours in pursuit of the missing couple. employing a grid pattern around Maze Loop Trail. For days and weeks that followed, hundreds of individuals, including concerned friends, family members, and law enforcement personnel, combed through the challenging terrain of the park, as well as the surrounding communities, in a relentless quest to locate the couple. Despite the collective efforts and vast search and rescue resources deployed, Orbeso and Wen remained missing, with their whereabouts unknown. In August 2017, after an exhaustive 4-week search for the missing couple yielded no results, a decision was made to reduce the search efforts to weekends only. During this challenging period, the families of Rachel and Joseph convened a press conference to provide updates on the ongoing search. In a heartfelt plea, they announced a $10,000 reward for any information that could lead to the discovery of Rachel and Joseph. Gilbert Orbeso, the father of Joseph Orbeso, emotionally addressed the public, saying, "If Joseph and Rachel can see or hear this message, we want them to know we love them very much. If Joseph and Rachel are held against their will and are captive in any way, we please ask you to release them." His words reflected the profound concern and unwavering love that the families held for their missing loved ones. David Smith, a park ranger at Joshua Tree National Park, shed light on the challenging nature of the Maze Loop Trail, stating, "The Maze Loop is called the Maze Loop because it is like a maze. There are inviting side canyons to explore. As you're hiking, there are boulder formations that you can go through while you're inside the maze." Smith's insight emphasized the complexity of the terrain in which the couple had gone missing. Gilbert Orbeso, demonstrating immense determination and love for his son, continued to visit Joshua Tree National Park daily in his quest to find Joseph, even as the official search for the couple was scaled back. He revealed, "Physically, it's taken a toll, but I still feel like I need to come every weekend until I find something." Remarkably, a dedicated group of individuals rallied around Gilbert, vowing never to let him search alone. They committed to joining him each weekend and meticulously mapped out and conducted grid searches across 10-acre sections of the rugged landscape, enduring the sweltering triple-digit heat. Among them were former members of Joshua Tree Search and Rescue, who were intimately aware of the inherent risks. Expressing his gratitude for the support, Gilbert Orbeso stated, "It's a blessing to know that people are there for you. All the support is very much appreciated." As the search intensified, U.S. Marshals entered the investigation, dispatching 4 agents to the area to follow up on leads. Many had begun to suspect that foul play might be a factor contributing to the couple's disappearance. When asked whether he believed there was a possibility that Rachel and Joseph might be located outside the park, Gilbert Orbeso replied with resolve, "Yes, always. That's why we announced in the media a reward, because of the possibility they may be out of the park." Nonetheless, Gilbert remained unwavering in his commitment, making the drive from the Los Angeles area every Saturday to search for clues in the park. Several leads pertaining to his son and Rachel included alleged sightings at another Airbnb in the vicinity and the discovery of 4 types of drugs at the house they had rented. Reflecting on the ordeal, Gilbert said, "It was very hard, and I can say that we were close to Joseph, and Mom always talked to Joseph, and he was pretty responsible." His dedication was resolute, declaring, "As long as it takes, I'm driven, and he's our son. We love him as long as it takes." Despite the collective efforts and vast search and rescue resources deployed, Orbeso and Wen remained missing, with their whereabouts unknown. On October 15, 2017, a major but devastating breakthrough in the case was reported. 2 bodies were found in Joshua Tree, locked in an embrace, nearly 3 months after the couple vanished while hiking nearby. The San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department said the bodies were found Sunday at the end of a trail of water bottles and food wrappers. Officials did not confirm the identities of the bodies and were awaiting an autopsy. But Gilbert Orbeso knew it was his son and Rachel that was found. "I believed I was going to find them. I didn't know when, but I had my answer today. I hope that they can rest in peace now. After going a long time on these hikes, I feel that we have closure, and we know we found them. That was our main goal, was to find them," he said. The 2 bodies were discovered in a steep canyon and died of gunshot wounds in what appeared to be a murder-suicide. A gun found near the pair was registered to Joseph Orbeso. Detectives believe Joseph shot Rachel, then immediately shot himself. Usually there's history. a note or message to someone. In the absence of that, it is difficult to determine a motive. We don't know that, and we'll probably never know that. Cindy Bachman, a spokeswoman for the sheriff's office. The area's triple-digit temperatures affected the conditions of the bodies and made it difficult to determine when they died. Austin Young, who described Mr. Orbezo as the best friend I ever had, in a post on Facebook, said Orbezo worked in the security industry, which was why he owned a gun. Joseph did not maliciously kill Rachel, Austin wrote. He put him and her out of their misery. Joseph took the gun to Joshua Tree to protect himself and Rachel. In a statement, the Wen family said, "It was explained to us by the investigators on scene, with the circumstances and positioning of the bodies, that they believe this was a sympathetic murder-suicide. We hold no grudges against Joseph or the Orbezo family." Rachel's aunt, commenting on the discovery, stated, "This is an accident. She had a head injury and he tried to save her the only way he could." The family came to that conclusion based on conversations with the police. Another family member said relatives believe Wen slipped and fell, hitting her head. Orbezo carefully attended to her as they waited, desperate for water. When authorities found the body, they saw that Orbezo had taken some of his clothes to wrap them around her to keep her warm and comfortable. Until the moment they felt they had lost hope, the family member said. The county coroner released the results of an autopsy of Rachel Wen and Joseph Orbezo. Sheriff's detectives say Orbezo shot Wen with a .40 caliber handgun and then turned the weapon on himself, with the two families believing the murder-suicide was a result of desperation after the couple became lost in the park and ran out of food and water. The autopsy findings provided no evidence to affirm or challenge this belief. They had arranged their clothing to shield their lower bodies from the relentless sun and scorching heat. According to investigators, it seemed they had been carefully conserving their limited food and water supplies. The couple's remains were found about 2 miles from where they parked their car. Detectives learned the couple obtained hallucinogenic drugs prior to entering the park, and they found a hallucinogenic mushroom in a backpack under Orbezo's body. The toxicology test did not reveal any drugs in Orbezo's system at the time of death. A separate test on Wen found trace elements of cannabis in her system. Searchers discovered the bodies of Orbezo and Wen side by side under a cat's claw tree against a canyon wall. Detectives believe the couple might have been seeking shelter from the blazing sun. Wen's left arm was extended under the remains of Orbezo. Orbezo's right arm was resting on Wen's left hip. The revolver, containing 3 spent cartridge casings in the cylinder and 3 empty chambers, was found buried in the sand next to Orbezo's left leg. While Orbezo and Wen each died from a single gunshot to the head, it wasn't been determined if the third shot might have been fired to gain the attention of searchers, said a sheriff's spokesman. They had a choice of a slow and painful death or a quick death. And they made the choice of a quick death, Austin Young said. The following is a hypothetical series of events of what may have happened to Rachel Wen and Joseph Orbezo. The couple embarked on their journey one scorching summer morning, equipped with their backpacks, water bottles, and a deep sense of excitement. They were eager to hike the Maze Loop Trail, a challenging route known for its rugged terrain and breathtaking vistas. As Rachel and Joseph ventured deeper into the desert, they marveled at the unique beauty of Joshua Tree. Towering rock formations, twisted Joshua trees, and the vast expanse of the desert stretched out before them. They followed the trail markers diligently, but the maze-like nature of the trail soon became apparent. Hours turned into days as they navigated the maze of rocks and canyons. The unforgiving desert sun beat down relentlessly, sapping their strength and depleting their water supply. They were lost, and their situation grew increasingly dire. With each passing day, Rachel and Joseph faced the harsh realities of the desert. The scorching heat made their water evaporate quickly, leaving them parched and desperate. They rationed their dwindling supplies, but the relentless sun took its toll. As the energy supplies were severely diminished, Rachel slipped and fell, injuring herself severely, and was unable to move any further. Joseph, understanding the gravity of the situation, carried Rachel with all that he had left to an area with some shade. Unable to walk anymore, Rachel and Joseph are now immobile inside a small canyon, lost and nowhere to be found. Rachel was in dire need of medical attention. Unable to move, the two were now at the mercy of someone finding them. Despite the dire circumstances, Rachel and Joseph clung to each other for strength and support. Their love and friendship grew stronger as they faced the unforgiving elements together. A ray of hope was when they heard a vehicle. Joseph aims his gun into the air and pulls the trigger, but no one hears the shot. As the days went on, and the last of the food and water diminished, their bodies weakened from dehydration and exhaustion. Both were suffering, especially Rachel, whose injuries had taken their toll. She was done with the suffering. She couldn't take the pain any longer and was asking him to end the misery and shoot her. Joseph couldn't. This was his dear friend, and he still believed there was hope they would be found. A few days later, as thirst and hunger gnawed at them, Orbeso had lost all hope. Rachel was barely conscious, and he knew she would die soon, and him as well. So he pondered the unthinkable, but he knew there was no way out. In the quiet darkness of the desert night, they lay down together, their arms wrapped around each other in a loving embrace. The stars twinkled overhead, bearing witness to their final moments together. Joseph brandishes his .40 caliber pistol. Unable to cry because he's severely dehydrated, he pulls the trigger, shooting Rachel. Joseph, with his head down, seeing his Rachel slumped over from the gunshot, knew it was over. This is where, amongst the boulders and twisted pines of Joshua Tree National Park, would be his final resting place. There's no coming back from what he has just done. He finally gets the courage to do what needs to be done. He picks up Rachel's limp body. Since he's right-handed and needs that to pull the trigger, he wraps his arm and places it around Rachel's hip as he puts the barrel of the gun next to his temple and pulls the trigger. Another gunshot rings loud in the desolate desert as the moon shines brightly in Joshua Tree. Based on the evidence from the investigation and the autopsy report, it's the logical conclusion that Joseph Orbeso and Rachel Wen died of gunshot wounds after days of hunger, heat-related illness, and dehydration, which took a toll on their mind and bodies. They felt a quick death was the only way to alleviate the suffering. Joshua Tree National Park is a mesmerizing park, and many visit to experience the raw beauty of nature. However, beneath its mesmerizing beauty lies a rugged and unforgiving terrain that demands respect and preparedness. This park is notorious for missing hikers, injured rock climbers, and all the things that can go wrong in the desert wilderness. A year after the Wen and Orbeso tragedy, Claire Nelson, a hiker from New Zealand, found herself injured from a fall, shattering her pelvis. She was immobile and stranded for days. Luckily, search and rescue found her and made a full recovery. There are many stories similar to Orbeso, Wen, and Claire Nelson in this park. Let these stories serve as a reminder of the dangers that accompany the allure of Joshua Tree. Embrace this beautiful, rugged terrain with open arms, but also with the respect it has earned. Rachel Wen and Joseph Orbeso were a testament to the power of love that endures even in the face of nature's harshest challenges. They had embarked on an adventure together, and in the end, they left this world as they had lived it, an everlasting bond as enduring as the desert itself. Their story served as a poignant reminder of the unpredictability of nature and to always be prepared for the worst. Joshua Tree National Park, once the backdrop of their adventure, had now become their final resting place. In a statement, the family of Rachel stated, "We extend our heartfelt condolences to the Orbeso family and that they will remain in our prayers. We thank God that we'll be able to give Rachel a proper burial and lay her to rest." When speaking about his best friend, Austin Young stated, "I wish it didn't have to end this way. You deserved much better, but just know that I'll always love you as a brother, and you and our memories will always be part of my life." For Holly Cordier, her Zion trip would be compelling. Holly Cordier, 38 at the time, from Woodland Hills, California, was described as a free-spirited mom and avid hiker, had lost her nannying job due to the pandemic earlier in 2020, and was traveling the country in a converted van. Holly Cordier had always been drawn to the allure of nature's solitude, a longing for a connection with something greater than what the world has to offer. Holly had been with personal trauma over the past several years. As she stood at the entrance of Zion National Park, the towering red cliffs and rust-colored canyons beckoned her to embark on a journey of self-discovery. Holly was seeking a total disconnect from society and seeking solace in one of the most gorgeous areas in the world. She paid the park entrance fee with her credit card and then took a private shuttle to the grotto area at 1:30 p.m., which was the last time anyone would see her again. Armed with a backpack filled with essentials, she ventured into the heart of Zion, determined to lose herself in its majestic beauty. The trailhead welcomed her with open arms, and she began to follow the winding paths that led deeper into the canyon. As the modern world faded away behind her, Holly felt a weight lifting off her shoulders. The echoes of footsteps on concrete were replaced by the soft crunch of dried vegetation beneath her hiking boots. After embarking on an all-day hike, Holly found a secluded spot, strung up her hammock between two sturdy trees in a vegetated area near the Virgin River. But as she went to sit on it, it swung back, causing her to hit her head on a tree. The once serene wilderness now felt ominous and disorienting. Her sense of direction failed her, and despite her best efforts, she found herself lost in Zion's clutches. Days turned into a blur as Holly struggled to find her way back to civilization. She rationed her supplies, relying on the skills she had acquired as an outdoors woman. As dehydration and exhaustion took their toll, Holly's situation grew dire. Several days later, as there had been no communication from Holly to her daughter or sister, she was reported as missing. Kaylee Chambers, Holly's daughter, expressed concern, noting that she typically spoke with her mother almost daily and had now gone well over a week without hearing from her. A week following her disappearance, Deputy Chief Ranger Andrew Fitzgerald and Chief of Interpretation Amanda Rowland conducted a press conference regarding 38-year-old Holly Suzanne Cordier. They shared additional details and information with the public, emphasizing that the mild weather could enhance Holly's chances of survival. Fitzgerald stated, "Right now we are committed to finding Holly. We are going to keep searching as long as there are clues or leads. We don't have a predicted time when we would stop searching." Cordier had left her phone in California, so the search efforts did not focus on her electronic activity, and she had not provided any itinerary. Zion officials discovered Cordier's vehicle in a nearby town. Kaylee Chambers revealed that her mother had been traveling the country in a converted van after losing her job due to the coronavirus pandemic. Chambers affirmed her mother's experience as a hiker, having ventured alone before, and her familiarity with Zion National Park. "I know she would not give up on me, so I refuse to give up on her. I don't care if I'm the only person on the trail looking for her. I'm not going to stop until I find her," Chambers declared. Search efforts spanned throughout Zion National Park, with search and rescue teams primarily concentrating on ground search crews due to the challenging terrain. In an Instagram post, Kaylee wrote, "They have many search parties out looking for her. A lot of locals have gathered together to create extra search parties. The Rangers have informed me that unless they gather additional intel, they will only be continuing their search for 1 to 2 more days. It's getting down to the final few days of survival without food. All the prayers we can get for her safe return and the safety of all those searching for her is greatly appreciated." I want to thank all of you for the kind messages, prayers, words, or encouragement, and all the reposts, the post stated. A month prior to her disappearance, Holly and Kaylee ventured into the Narrows, a spectacular and slender canyon within Zion National Park. This mother-daughter expedition served as a celebratory trip for Kaylee's 19th birthday. Overwhelmed by the breathtaking beauty of the gorge, the deeply spiritual Cordier exclaimed, "I've never been this close to God." Holly, having lost her job due to COVID-19, viewed it as an opportunity to fulfill her dream of exploring national parks. Fast forward to October 6th, when Holly embarked on a solo journey to Zion and hasn't been seen or heard from since. Now, Kaylee fervently prays for her mother's safe return, acknowledging the critical nature of the situation. Concerns mount regarding the unknown duration of Holly's supplies. Amanda Rowland, a public information officer for Zion National Park, describes the vastness of the park, encompassing massive sandstone cliffs, slot canyons, and extensive wilderness, a challenging terrain that extends over 232 square miles or 373 kilometers. Zion officials focused their search on common areas, combing the east side and the Narrows. Kaylee remained optimistic, believing her mother possessed the skills to endure Zion's rugged terrain for an extended period. On October 14th, Holly's family organized a private search, distinct from the National Park Service efforts due to the NPS's stringent requirements. A drone was authorized for use, which covered key trails in areas like Watchman, Weeping Rock, and Hidden Canyon. Thermal imaging cameras were strategically placed after a tip in Pine Creek, but despite nighttime operations with night vision and thermal imaging, no substantial leads emerged. As drone operations continued, search dogs were deployed, and Holly's family initiated a GoFundMe, Please Help Find Holly Courtier, seeking financial support for supplies, lodging, investigators, and other resources. By October 17th, exhaustive search efforts with 29 personnel and 5 dogs yielded no new clues. In subsequent days, despite the continuous efforts of over 20 searchers, a drone, and 5 dogs scouring Zion Canyon daily, no significant breakthroughs emerged. October 18th, 2020, would be a day of a major breakthrough in the case. In the morning, the incident commander briefed the team, emphasizing that drone operations and investigations were the primary focus in the ongoing search for Holly. Faced with a lack of clues, the practicality of deploying personnel to areas or trails with no foreseeable end was deemed not helpful anymore. However, the commander assured the team that any credible tips or clues would be thoroughly pursued. During mid-morning, a pivotal tip emerged from a visitor who reported spotting a small human in a hammock. Searchers were promptly assigned specific areas to investigate based on this information. While scouring the designated areas yielded no results, a searcher decided to explore an unofficial trail branching off the main route. Describing the experience, the searcher said, "I came to a small social path that looked unused but led to an area of dense vegetation. I decided to investigate the area. As I moved through the brush, I noticed a blue object that I later identified as a backpack. As I made my way closer to the object, the area opened up, and I could clearly see a hammock and a woman laying in the hammock. The searcher identified the woman as Courtier, and Holly confirmed her identity. Located less than a mile from the grotto, an area near the main park road and heavily used hiking trails, Holly was guided to safety. Subsequently, she reunited with her sister and daughter, and they drove her to the hospital where she received medical attention. She was treated for a concussion, foot injuries from the cold, and severe dehydration. According to her older sister, Jamie Strong, Holly had lost 15 pounds or 7 kilos and exhibited signs of kidney dysfunction. Upon discovery, Holly also had a large lump on the back of her head from hitting it against a tree while tying her hammock. Kaylee revealed that her mother had become disoriented after the head injury, lacking the energy to walk out. The family expressed gratitude for the search teams, volunteers, and the network of people who collaborated tirelessly, releasing a statement that read, "We are overjoyed that she was found safely today. We would like to thank the rangers and search teams who relentlessly looked for her day and night and never gave up hope. We are also so grateful to the countless volunteers who were generous with their time, resources, and support. This wouldn't have been possible without the network of people who came together." In the following days, an official investigation into the case raised numerous inquiries regarding Holly's disappearance. Initially, the family mentioned Courtier's proximity to the river as a potential water source for survival. However, many familiar with the park knew of the Virgin River's toxicity, rendering it undrinkable. As online discussions unfolded, Sergeant Darrell Cashin, a vital contributor to the search and rescue effort from Washington County Sheriffs, expressed doubts about Courtier's account and highlighted inconsistencies. Courtier's daughter recounted that her mother had suffered a head injury early in the hike, becoming so dehydrated that she couldn't open her mouth. Cashin questioned this narrative, noting that park officials stated she left the park largely unassisted. He also raised concerns about Courtier's ability to endure nearly 2 weeks alone without sufficient food and limited water. Cashin emphasized that drinking from the Virgin River, known for a parasitic infection, would likely have made her severely ill or worse. The sergeant pondered the absence of immediate medical intervention if Courtier had truly sustained a severe head injury, stating that search and rescue teams would have called for medical assistance. As questions emerged, speculation arose about the possibility of a staged disappearance despite family denials. Some members of the search and rescue team found certain aspects of the case perplexing. Cashin highlighted the challenges Cordier would have faced surviving without water, suggesting it was a high possibility she would not have endured if relying on the river for 12 days. Jamie Strong, Cortier's sister, countered claims that Holly had drunk from the river, asserting that she swished water in her mouth and spat it out, being fully aware of the water's toxins. Strong mentioned Cortier's practice of dry fasting before entering the park, possibly aiding her survival. Responding to queries about Cortier's lack of food, Strong stated her sister had none. Addressing concerns about why Holly didn't call for help in a heavily visited area of the park, Strong explained that Cordier did spot a person, but was so dehydrated that she couldn't open her mouth to yell for help. The circumstances surrounding Holly Cordier's disappearance and survival continued to generate questions and speculation. Drawing from statements issued by both Zion National Park and the Cordier family, along with his extensive experience as an advanced EMT and 9-year tenure as the county's search and rescue liaison, Cashin points out several discrepancies and questions that do not add up. Despite claims that Holly was going into the park for just the day, she was well equipped with a backpack, a hammock, and warm weather attire. Her location at the time of discovery, near the Virgin River and the Grotto Picnic parking area, raises suspicion as it is close to Zion Canyon Scenic Drive, not deep within the wilderness. This proximity to well-traveled areas makes it questionable that she couldn't seek help, especially considering her head injury resulted from a branch knock rather than a fall. The search operations incurred a park cost of $60,000, excluding private expenses. The NPS investigation noted that a sticker was affixed to Holly's car for prolonged parking when they found it, but the sticker disappeared the next day. On October 13th, a report surfaced of an encounter with a woman with brown hair and a blue backpack who appeared to be sleeping. Upon discovery on October 18th, Holly demonstrated the ability to help herself, walking 1,000 yards or 915 meters back to the ranger's station, contradicting claims of weakness, starvation, dehydration, and the need for assistance to stay upright, as asserted by her family. The investigation revealed that when found, Holly appeared detached from reality. The investigation noted the description of the areas searched and where the October 13th tip was reported. Nothing found strongly suggested that any makeshift camp was settled in these areas, and many deniers of her claims believed she moved around to avoid detection. In December, a newspaper acquired the exchange between Sergeant Cashin, the NPS, and other personnel regarding Cordier's case. Within the correspondence, Zion's Deputy Chief Ranger, Andrew Fitzgerald, expressed admiration for Cashin's statements. Cashin wished for a comprehensive release of all facts from the authorities. A person purportedly close to the family in a text to a local news station claimed that Cordier orchestrated the incident, strategically planning her visit to Zion weeks prior to gain publicity. The individual asserted that Cordier posted her intentions on Facebook a month earlier, only to delete them shortly before her return. The text conveyed skepticism, stating, "Don't fall for it, people. She played us." Concerns also surfaced regarding a GoFundMe account initiated by Cordier's daughter just 3 days before Holly was found. The fund amassed nearly $12,000 in donations, leading to speculation about its legitimacy. Jamie Strong, the GoFundMe organizer, explained that she had forgotten about the ongoing fundraiser while actively caring for her sister. She promptly shut it down upon being reminded, clarifying that the funds would reimburse family and friends for search-related expenses and support Cordier's medical care. In an update on the GoFundMe, Strong emphasized that anyone could request a refund without objection from the family. After a report on the investigation and Cashin's doubts about the disappearance, some readers questioned the timing of the GoFundMe creation, suggesting that Cordier and her daughter orchestrated the event to profit. A reader's email to St. George News expressed suspicion, stating, "After reading this article, it strengthens our beliefs that this woman and her daughter orchestrated this plan to get lost, then found in her attempt to make some money, and she is doing so from her GoFundMe that was conveniently created the minute that she was found." In response, GoFundMe regional spokesperson Jenny Perillo confirmed that the company's trust and safety team collaborated with Cordier's sister, Jamie Strong, who organized the fundraiser. The original intent was to cover lodging for family members searching for Courtier, supply costs for the search, and Holly's medical expenses upon her discovery. Strong disabled new donations to the fundraiser and provided a detailed breakdown of how the raised funds would be utilized. Holly has suffered from mental health issues in the past and went on her hike not in the best frame of mind. She did not intend to become injured or so weak on her journey, nor did she intend for her trip to become a search and rescue effort. If Holly were not found when she would have died, the GoFundMe page stated. In January 2021, after a Washington County investigation into the case of Courtier, investigators were unable to find any evidence of fraud or any other criminal activity associated with the disappearance and rescue. The criminal investigation was closed, although NPS was working on the final investigative report that would be made available to the public once completed. In March of 2021, NPS released the investigation into the disappearance and rescue. In all, the search and rescue cost $60,000. The 21 documents tied to the incident included 136 pages, mostly search logs and maps. Most of the documents were heavily redacted due to claims of privacy exemptions under the Freedom of Information Act. A log summary stated Zion was alerted to Courtier's disappearance by email. In her car was an addressed envelope on the dashboard, but there was no information on what was inside. Her keys were found inside. An official placed an orange overdue sticker on the car, but a day later, it was missing. The official attempted to obtain security footage for a better description of the clothing, but the video was not available due to technical difficulties. The report summarized the daily events during the search as well. The post-rescue interview with Courtier and follow-up investigation was entirely redacted. The case file said a taped interview was included, but this was not released to the public. Maps included chronicled the movement of the search and rescue team throughout the 12-day search. Due to heavy redaction, nothing else can definitively be derived from the summary that the public did not already know. Holly Courtier has largely stayed away from making public statements or interviews regarding her disappearance. In an interview with the Today Show, Jamie Strong stated, "She was very scared and traumatized, and she wanted to leave the park in my car with me and my husband and her daughter, and we drove her straight to the emergency room, so things have just been twisted," Strong said. Strong and her family were grateful to the park rangers, authorities, and volunteers from the community of Springdale for helping Courtier return to them. "I think that's what carried her through was people praying for her," Strong said. "I've never seen so many kind people." For Dave Coughlin and Rafi Kadikian, their journey into the Chihuahuan Desert would be a catastrophe. In August 1999, Dave Coughlin was embarking on a cross-country move to attend graduate school, and his best friend Rafi Kadikian decided to come along. While Kadikian waited in Boston, Dave handled the final details in Norfolk County, Massachusetts. That morning, he bid farewell to his girlfriend Sonnet in Milford, arriving in Boston around 4 o'clock. Rafi eagerly joined him, and they began their journey. The road trip marked the culmination of weeks of planning. Dave brought along a travel diary to capture important moments on the trip. Over nearly 5 years, their friendship endured separations, graduations, career challenges, and the trials of relationships. His relationship with Day Deku originated in 1991 when Dave was a freshman at UMass Amherst. Deku's friend Kirsten Swan attended Boston University and dated Rafi. Dave and Rafi took on to each other quite quickly. They had similar interests and they continued their friendship despite him and Day breaking up. After college, Rafi tried to join the Boston Globe as a writer, but after some setbacks, ended up going into the financial sector. At the same time, Dave navigated various jobs while living with his parents. Dave envisioned an opportunity in California for graduate school at UC Santa Barbara. However, to qualify, he needed to establish residency, requiring a year in the state before classes began. Money was a factor, and though his parents could offer some assistance, he'd need to work and save. Consulting with his dad, they decided he should visit California. Dave flew out on May 18, 1999, accompanied by Kirsten, who had relatives in the area, and was considering moving out there as well. At this time, Rafi and Kirsten had broken up. Despite her past relationship with Rafi, Swan and Dave had grown closer. Rafi approved, considering the amicable breakup. Initially, Rafi couldn't join Dave on his adventure. Dave's southern swing route mirrored a trip Rafi took in 1997. Rafi was a writer and sold the road trip story to the Boston Globe. A week before Dave's departure, Rafi, Kirsten, Sonnet, and friends hosted a bittersweet going-away dinner, realizing they wouldn't see Dave for a long time. Excitedly discussing his plans to visit Graceland, New Orleans, and Austin, Dave's enthusiasm stirred Rafi's wanderlust. Rafi immediately requested unpaid leave from work, which was granted, convincing his supervisor to give him the time off. Dave delayed the road trip by 2 weeks to accommodate Rafi's inclusion. Starting their journey south, they visited Rafi's parents and Dave's sister. Arriving in New Orleans, they explored Bourbon Street before heading to Austin, craving a real bed and booking a Motel 6. Eager for a break, they discussed their itinerary over beers at a local bar. Despite being a day ahead of schedule, the pace was taking a toll, and the trip felt lacking to what they had seen in 5 cities, and they wanted something more rugged. They were planning to head northwest to Amarillo and then west to Santa Fe, so they aimed for the Grand Canyon on Thursday. Dave, recalling advice to visit Carlsbad Caverns, realized it was on their route west, proposing a detour through Phoenix on Thursday. Around 5 p.m., road-weary and nursing hangovers, they reached White City near Carlsbad Caverns National Park. Seeking a camping spot, they inquired at the visitor center. The ranger suggested Rattlesnake Canyon, 5 miles down a dirt road. Having camped only once so far, the friends considered their limited opportunities to rough it. They decided to go for it, obtaining a camping permit from the ranger. Rafi noted their car details and both names on the permit. Afterward, he bought 3 pint-sized water bottles, far below the gallon each the ranger suggested. Rafi and David anticipated having Rattlesnake Canyon to themselves, as no other cars were in the small dirt lot. They considered themselves well-equipped with camping gear, possessing essentials like pocket knives, hats, sunglasses, boots, flashlights, matches, band-aids, and cigarette lighters. However, they lacked key items such as a compass, signal mirror, binoculars, whistle, and a first aid kit. Standard camping equipment included a tent, sleeping bags, foam pads, a portable stove, fuel, frying pans, dishes, and Tupperware. Their food supplies included creamed corn, beans, hot dogs, buns, and energy bars. Among trivial items were playing cards and cigars. With packs on their shoulders, they descended the trail into the canyon, passing rock cairns marking the way. After reaching the canyon floor, they rested, consuming water to combat the mid-80s temperature. Despite the flat terrain offering camping options, they pressed on, choosing a site next to a rock face with a natural bench. After setting up the tent, they prepared dinner, hot dogs and creamed corn, realizing they needed water to boil the hot dogs. Their last pint of water was used, and after the meal, they quenched their thirst with Gatorade. As dusk settled in, the 2 friends reflected on their 2,700-mile journey through America, feeling accomplished. They planned to visit the cave the next day and later head to the Grand Canyon. Chatting about the future of their friendship, they slept in their tent under the soft desert night. The duo packed their gear as morning arrived and prepared to resume their journey. After hiking slightly over a mile, they encountered a cairn on the riverbed's edge, accompanied by a path leading to the canyon's eastern slopes, where they had descended the previous evening. Pausing to rest, they realized the easy downhill they experienced would now be an uphill climb. They checked their water bottles, finding little left from the previous night's hike and hot dog preparation. However, a full Gatorade bottle awaited them back at the car. They drank the remaining water to fortify themselves for the ascent. Continuing, they followed the trail into a brush field, surprised when it led them back into the riverbed. After about 50 yards, they felt a sense of unfamiliarity. Believing the exit trail was farther back, they backtracked through the field, meticulously searching for cairns marking the trail. Unable to find any, they concluded that the exit was likely a few hundred yards back. Backtracking confidently, they noticed reassuring cairns in a wide spot where a small side canyon joined Rattlesnake's main channel. Expecting to see more cairns in the direction of their car, they were mystified when none appeared. Consulting the topographical map Rafi had purchased, they hoped its $7.95 cost would prove worthwhile. The map, created in collaboration with the Park Service, detailed the caverns and the park's backcountry, including trails, roads, springs, and riverbeds. Both had trouble deciphering the map. Despite this, they remained undiscouraged and formed a search area of about a quarter-mile along the riverbed and canyon slopes. Initially walking quickly, then trying shorter intervals with stops, occasionally splitting up, they explored different areas. Each location seemed to hold the key, and when the path failed to appear, they found humor in the situation, joking about the campsite being half-assed. However, they grew quieter as the morning progressed into the afternoon, sensing a change in Rattlesnake Canyon. By 11 a.m., with the sun above the canyon walls and temperatures climbing at about 3 degrees per hour, they retreated into the shade of a shrub bank. Initially planning to resume their search in a few minutes, they lingered in the relative coolness of the bushes, contemplating the incredibility that they had been carefree in the canyon only 3 hours earlier. Around noon, a cloud cover provided relief from the sun, and more importantly, signaled the onset of the rainy season. Rafi and David emerged from beneath the bush as raindrops fell, letting the downpour cool their skin. Feeling the first pangs of thirst, they regretted not having containers to collect water. However, they observed water pooling beneath larger rocks and swiftly improvised. Kneeling over the puddles, they slurped mouthfuls of gritty water, spitting it back into empty bottles. By the end of the rain, they had collected about 3/4 of a pint each, adopting a strategy of rationing small sips. Buoyed by the rain, they resumed the search for the exit trail, uncertain of their location in the canyon. Opting to avoid getting further lost, they decided to stay in the general area, hoping rangers would search for them soon. Hunger set in, and they turned to prickly pear cactus for sustenance, discovering the succulent and sweet fruit on the pads. As weariness set in during the late afternoon, they accepted that they wouldn't find the trail that day. Facing their second night in Rattlesnake Canyon, they found little solace in the desert dusk, but took comfort in the cooler temperatures. Chewing on cactus fruit, they discussed their situation, acknowledging they were lost in a desert with limited water. However, the camping permit became a symbol of hope, a tangible piece of evidence of their presence, akin to a contract entitling them to rescue. Despite concerns about the ranger misplacing it, they tried to stay optimistic, bolstered by the rain and the cactus fruit discovery. That night, they spotted car headlights on a distant canyon wall, convincing them that heading in that direction would lead to a road. The next morning on Friday, August 6th, the day they were meant to be in California, they hiked in that direction. During their journey, they encountered the remnants of a ranch foundation. Besides the cairns marking the canyon trail, this foundation was the sole hint of civilization in the area. As Kodikian dubbed it, Mountain Number 3 loomed about 700 feet west of the foundation. Although it resembled a mountain from below, it was part of Rattlesnake Canyon's southwestern wall, featuring inhospitable terrain with ridges and gullies. The ridges, resembling gnarled fingers, led to the summit but were serrated by impassable limestone formations. Alternatively, the gullies, though smoother, were steeper and littered with rubble. Dagger-like agave plants further complicated the ascent. Wading through creosote bushes at the base, they began climbing, navigating around cacti and taking breaks to indulge in cactus fruit. The ascent was slow, with the constant threat of slipping down the steep slopes. As they reached the upper sections, towering limestone walls blocked their path, forcing them to traverse left for a more gradual route. Every challenging ledge they conquered revealed another ahead, seemingly endless. Despite their exhaustion, they persisted until they reached the summit unexpectedly, anticipating a road but finding none. The lights they saw the night before led them astray, offering minimal assistance at great cost. Now farther from their car, they were exposed to barren heights with little shade, depleting more water than the entire previous day. "What are we doing up here? We should have stayed in camp. This is stupid," Dave expressed. "Let's move a little farther on," Rafi suggested. The climb out had at least freed them from Rattlesnake Canyon, placing them on a nearly flat plateau. Despite their elevated vantage point, they failed to spot recognizable landmarks like the visitor center or water tanks. Continuing across the plateau, Kodikian's strength waned, prompting him to rest in the shade of a shrub while Coughlin surveyed. To the south, a new landscape unfolded, revealing desert plains below. "If we can make it out onto those plains, there's got to be a road out there," Dave reported excitedly. Rafi listened but made no move to get up. Exhaustion had immobilized him. "If you think you can make it, go," Kadikian told him. "Send back help," he said. Coughlin hesitated, unwilling to leave his friend, and eventually joined him in the shade. As the temperature soared into the 90s, they abandoned thoughts of venturing onto the plains, hoping for cooler conditions later. They spent the entire day Friday on the plateau, seeking whatever shade they could find. Ants bit them as they lay on the ground, prompting them to move to a larger bush, where they hung their shirts for additional shade. Despite their efforts, the temperature reached nearly 100 degrees by 3 p.m. At this point, vultures started circling the duo. To them, this signaled they were waiting for them to die and feast on their flesh. They knew they were stranded in the desert, and now the vultures were circling. "There's no way we're going to let that happen to us. We'll kill ourselves first. We will not let the buzzards get us alive. God forgive us," Rafi later wrote in the journal. The environment seemed to assail them even when lying still. The ants, sharp rocks, birds, burrs in their socks, and the wind that constantly blew their shirts off the branches, forcing them to rise and reposition. In the late afternoon, Dave finally turned to Rafi. "I gotta get out of here, or I'm gonna go nuts," he said. Rafi had also had enough of the plateau, and so, after expending invaluable amounts of water climbing out of Rattlesnake Canyon, they rose from the languishment of the bush, wearily put their shirts back on, and prepared to walk back into the trap they had toiled to escape. Before leaving the plateau, they sucked on more cactus fruit, but given the heat, still near 100 by 5 p.m., it didn't help much. Sweat covered them as they descended into the canyon, again struggling for footholds on the upper slopes. They were thirsty beyond desperation when they were halfway back to the ranch foundation. They decided it was time to employ the oldest trick in the book. They would drink their own urine. What they didn't know was the urine of a dehydrated person is especially toxic and concentrated, and drinking it forces the kidneys to draw water from the blood to dilute it. In other words, urine takes more water to digest than it actually supplies. Kadikian took off his baseball cap. They'd brought the empty water bottles, hoping it might rain again. He turned the cap over, positioned it over one of the bottles, and peed. His urine was dark and concentrated. He put the bottle to his lips and sipped. The acrid taste of ammonia overwhelmed him. He tried to swallow, but immediately began to gag. "There's no way we're going to be able to drink this," Rafi said. Dave saw the look on his face and took his word for it. They continued toward the canyon floor. As they got closer, Coughlin caught a glimpse of something they could drink, sitting on the walls of the ranch foundation. They saw several plastic bottles, exactly the kind they'd bought at the visitor center, waiting right there on the ruined wall. They both realized the rangers must have come and seen the note they'd left back at the campsite. "We're heading towards the ranch foundation," it had said. They must have left the bottles in case Rafi and David came back. Their relief was instant. For 2 days, they'd been fantasizing about clean, cold water. Dave had been getting weak in the legs, having difficulty bracing himself against the downhill slope. So he told Rafi to go on ahead for the water. He'd catch up. Kadikian was drained, but worked his way through the scratchy maze of brush near the bottom without stopping. When he finally emerged into the open space of the riverbed, he made a beeline straight for the foundation. The water was not there. He sat down on the wall and waited for Dave. He could hear him snapping through the brush, knocking rocks around. He didn't have the heart to yell to him that it was yet another false lead. When Dave finally staggered over and saw that there was no water, he barely had the energy to dam the mirage. His legs were seizing up on him, and he immediately collapsed against the old stone wall. "I feel dizzy," he said. They sat a while on the foundation's ledge, waiting for Dave to catch his breath. There was no question where they'd go now. Back to camp was their only option until they got some rest. Dave rose to his legs, which shook and could barely walk. Rafi gave him his shoulder to lean on, and they made the trek back. But Rafi knew this was a bad turn of events. If Dave couldn't walk out, the situation would worsen. But to their surprise, they spotted a cairn they hadn't seen before. This gave them new hope, and they decided they needed to rest and prepare for the trek tomorrow. If Dave couldn't make it, Rafi would go alone. When they rose on Saturday morning, Coughlin felt an improvement in his condition. Outside the tent, he stood up, stretched his legs tentatively, and informed Rafi that he still had enough strength for another attempt. He didn't want to face the prospect of being left alone, and Rafi was relieved he wouldn't have to confront the hike back to the car alone. This time, they opted not to carry anything with them. The effort of carrying their own bodies out of the canyon would be challenging enough. Locating the cairn they'd seen on Friday proved to be a challenge. They initially walked past it and had to double back before Coughlin finally spotted it again. Standing beside the marker, they took a deep breath and focused on the task. The key to success lay in spotting another cairn they hadn't seen before, maybe one or two more. Once on the trail, it would be easier to follow, angled upward instead of concealed in the brush and stone-strewn flats of the canyon floor. However, their trek yielded no success. The duo remained lost, struggling to make sense of the terrain. "I'm going back to camp," Coughlin groaned, turning toward the one certainty he could find. "I'm going to keep looking for a little while," Rafi told Dave. He sensed the surrender in his friend's voice, and the growing sense of futility was affecting him too. Climbing a small rise to the right of the cairn, he gazed across the canyon toward the opposite slope. They had suspected the trail was in that direction, but amidst the uniform mix of rock, dirt, and cacti, he realized he could be staring directly at the trail and not even see it. He heard Dave calling for him. Returning to the campsite, Kadikian found Coughlin struggling to arrange larger nearby stones into a pattern. Beneath their weight, Coughlin weaved drunkenly, dropping them down angrily and nudging them into position with his feet. He was attempting to spell SOS. "Let me do that. You can work on a signal fire," Rafi suggested. While Rafi finished with the stones, Dave collected anything nearby that would burn and threw it into a pile. They poured what was left of their cooking fuel over it, ignited it, and as the smoke drifted away, they were not impressed. It barely even rose, just lingered in a sticky haze on the canyon floor. Growing desperate, they threw in Rafi's sleeping bag, hoping it would generate better smoke. It seemed promising momentarily as white bilious plumes spewed from the fire, but it still wouldn't rise above the walls. The one thing they didn't burn was the journal. Sometime later that day, Coughlin made his first entry, addressing his girlfriend, Sonnet Frost. "Nobody is coming to help. I love you. Tell Dan if I find a heavenly monkey, I will forward one along. We had forever, but now all we have is eternity. Who knows, maybe I'll get kicked out for disorderly conduct and be able to pay you a visit. You will always be in my heart, and you will always have an angel standing by. Eternally yours, David Andrew. P.S. I'm trying so hard to be strong right now, it's not working." Following their desperate signals for help, they sought refuge in the tent on what turned out to be the hottest day yet. By midday, the canyon's temperature was nearly 110 degrees. Battling the scorching heat, they cut the bottom out of their tent to allow air circulation upward and to access the cooler stones below, finding relief from the tent's nylon lining. Throughout the day, they continually shifted the rocks, replacing them as soon as they warmed, also grabbing handfuls of pebbles and running them down their backs, imagining the sensation of water. Clouds eventually began to roll in during the late afternoon. Crawling out of the tent, they took turns writing in the journal. Dave bid farewells to his family, friends, and Rafi. As the situation grew more dire, Rafi wrote for Coughlin, who was too weak to write. He documented, "Dave has asked that his remains be cremated and thrown over the edge of the Grand Canyon. I leave the handling of my remains to my family." In serious pain, according to Kadikian, they decided to end their lives together. Rafi pulled out his Gerber folding knife, and as it gleamed in the light of the ineffectual signal fire, both he and Dave attempted to slice into their veins, but exhaustion or fear prevented a fatal cut. According to Kadikian, as the night wore on, Coughlin's pain and determination to die increased. Sometime near dawn, he made a request that Rafi would honor. Dave asked him to kill him. He couldn't take the pain anymore. He lifted his arm and asked his best friend to stab him in the heart. Rafi took the knife and made a stab, but had a hard time getting deep, but Coughlin was in pain from the stab. "Come on, just do it," Dave said, egging him on. This time Rafi penetrated deep. Dave yells, so Rafi covers his mouth as he continues to dig into his friend's body. Soon after, the yelling stopped and Dave Coughlin was lifeless. He wrote in the journal, I killed and buried my best friend today. Dave had been in pain all night. At around 5 or 6, he turned to me and begged that I put my knife through his chest. I did. And a second time when he wouldn't die, he still breathed and spoke, so I told him I was going to cover his face. He said, okay, he struggled but died. I buried him with love. God and his family and mine, please forgive me. After Coughlin stopped moving, silence ensued, briefly broken while Rafi laid stones on Coughlin's grave, then enveloping him again from every direction for another 7 hours until the footsteps of Ranger Lance Matson finally shattered it. Around 1:30 p.m. on August 8, 1999, Park Ranger Lance Matson surveyed a maroon Mazda with Massachusetts plates, examining the expansive canyon below. The camping permit, issued to 2 men for a one-night stay 4 days earlier, signaled their overdue status. After seeking approval from a park volunteer, Matson set off towards the Rattlesnake Canyon Trail. Navigating the mountainside, he reached a ridge overlooking the campsite despite the absence of campers. Descending 670 feet, he encountered Rafi Kodikian. "Please tell me you have water," Rafi Kodikian gasped. Filthy and unkempt, clad only in shorts, he displayed scrapes on his arms and legs, typical of navigating through backcountry brush. The ranger swiftly handed him a bottle. "Where's your buddy?" he inquired. "Over there," Rafi responded, pointing towards the canyons. However, Matson saw no one. "Where?" "Right there," Kodikian insisted, pointing to the mound of rocks a few feet away. "I killed him." When Matson initially arrived, the situation seemed dire, with only 3 empty water bottles, merely 3 quarts between the 2 men. Heavy rocks had been arranged in the SOS pattern, although the last S was incomplete. Some of their belongings, a blue sleeping pad, a t-shirt, a sock, bore blood smudges, as did some rocks. However, despite dehydration, Kodikian could speak coherently and recovered within an hour of receiving a saline IV. Coughlin's autopsy revealed moderate to severe dehydration, but his urine and blood levels weren't deficient enough to cause death, indicating he was alive when stabbed. Investigators questioned how they got lost, given their campsite's proximity to the trailhead and their car. They also wondered how, if Kodikian was weak, he managed to bury his friend under 50-pound rocks. Another mystery was burning one of the men's sleeping bags, believed to be Coughlin's. Despite this, provisions like an unopened family-sized can of beans, a hot dog bun, and a first aid kit were found. Ranger Mark Makiha, arriving after Matson, struggled to rationalize their actions. Desert survival experts cautioned against imposing logic on such situations. Rafi was subsequently airlifted to the hospital, where a local investigator eagerly awaited questioning. When dehydration sets in, people make irrational decisions, notes desert survivalist David Alloway. "I've seen people do some foolish things." Authorities discovered the journal of Dave and Rafi, containing 16 entries chronicling desperation and despair in the desert. Both men expressed diminishing stamina and bid farewell to loved ones. Kodikian took Coughlin's life in Carlsbad Caverns National Park, stabbing him twice with a 4-inch folding knife. He confessed to a park ranger and in the journal found at the scene. Now, a full-scale investigation would commence. The question lingered. Was it a mercy killing, an act of devotion between best friends, or something else? The answer would decide Kodikian's fate. His attorney, Gary Mitchell, portrayed it as a fatal act of kindness, part of a death pact. He claimed Kodikian intended suicide after ending Coughlin's suffering but was too weak. New Mexico law doesn't permit mercy killings, but the sheriff and prosecutor contested Kodikian's account. Despite moderate to severe dehydration, Kodikian was coherent when found walking with normal vital signs. Both officials questioned the logic of Kodikian's actions, doubting the narrative of imminent death. The sheriff pointed to Kodikian's strength in moving heavy rocks, stating, "It's not logical." Law enforcement rejected Kodikian's justification, emphasizing that killing someone isn't permissible in New Mexico simply because they request it. Consequently, Rafi Kodikian was charged with second-degree murder. One motive proposed that Coughlin admitted to a previous involvement with Kodikian's ex-girlfriend, Kirsten Swan, potentially triggering jealousy and anger in Kodikian. Sheriff Click dispatched a senior deputy to Boston in search of a hidden motive, but found no evidence of discord. Even if Coughlin's death was seen as a mercy killing, it remained a homicide. Kadikian acknowledged guilt, and he faced a second-degree murder charge for David Coughlin's death. The case garnered extensive media coverage, fueling debates on morality, survival instincts, and the legal ramifications of extreme situations. Kadikian's trial became a focal point for discussions regarding the boundaries of compassion and the intricate decision-making involved in life-threatening circumstances. Mitchell signaled his intent to pursue an insanity defense, contending that extreme heat and thirst had mentally disoriented Kadikian during the fatal act. The judge, however, dismissed the insanity defense requiring prolonged insanity for such claims in New Mexico. An involuntary intoxication defense was also attempted but deemed complex for court proceedings. Mitchell briefed Rafi on the option to plead guilty to second-degree murder, allowing him to preserve the right to appeal the judge's decision on the involuntary intoxication motion. Opting for the plea deal meant proceeding directly to a sentencing hearing, which, in this unique case, the judge anticipated, would involve extensive testimony and argument beyond the norm. Rather than relying on a New Mexico jury, Kadikian accepted the plea deal, admitting guilt to second-degree murder and entrusting his fate to the court. Despite apparent support from David Coughlin's family for Rafi's assertions, he still had to confront the consequences of his friend's murder. During Kadikian's sentencing hearing, it was revealed that Coughlin's vomiting was likely a reaction to unripe cactus fruit, not the terminal stage of death by thirst. While both were dehydrated, other individuals had endured longer periods in hotter conditions and survived. Sitting tight and waiting for help would likely have sufficed. In an emotionally charged testimony during the hearing, Kadikian described how his friend, David Coughlin, pleaded for relief after 4 days of suffering from dehydration in Carlsbad Caverns National Park. Kadikian's defense centered on an entry in the journal where he referred to buzzards, illustrating their limited wilderness experience and perception shaped by Hollywood portrayals. What I thought I was doing was keeping my friend from going through 12 to 24 hours of hell before he died, Kadikian told the court. When the lawyers were through presenting their case, he announced his sentence. I find that it's unlikely that Mr. Kadikian will find himself in the situation that we've heard about for the past 2 days. The improbability of a reoccurrence turns the court's thoughts along a path of a consideration more of a general deterrence, a long period of incarceration, what the state has asked for, a severe sentence. But long incarceration, I think, has been proved here to not be the solution. I believe that it's predictable that Rafi does not pose a threat or danger to society. I do, however, think that Rafi Kadikian deserves to be punished for his violation of the law and the taking of the life of his friend, David Coughlin. Retribution, in this court's mind, serves the very important and crucial purpose of preserving the rule of law that we all have to have for an orderly society. Rafi Kadikian's conduct in this situation caused the life of David Coughlin to end. Mr. Coughlin was a particularly vulnerable victim, and the impact on his family is never and will never be forgotten by them. I do know that Rafi's conduct was not a result of a sustained criminal intent. His character and attributes that I have heard and read about suggest that he's not likely to reoffend. It is the court's sentence that Rafi be sentenced to 15 years in the Corrections Department of the state of New Mexico, and the execution of that sentence be suspended with the exception of 24 months. Rafi Kadikian accepted his 2-year sentence as he raised his hands to his face to hide his tears. A few minutes later, Kadikian, Mitchell, and Boyne walked upstairs to the courthouse's 3rd floor, where they held a short press conference. I still feel I did the right thing, Rafi told the reporters. I feel that anybody in my position who would turn their back on their friend in that position wouldn't be deserving of coming out of that canyon in the first place. How do you feel about the sentence? One reporter asked. This is a life sentence, he said. I will spend the rest of my life trying to justify my actions. Nearly a year following Kadikian's sentencing, Emily Schulman found herself lost in Rattlesnake Canyon. A hiker discovered an envelope on the canyon floor containing a letter from Emily penned 2 days earlier expressing her predicament and the need for help. Alongside her farewell messages to friends and family, the Boston, Massachusetts return address fueled the hiker's initial skepticism, reminiscent of the Coughlin-Kadikian case. However, as he encountered torn-up bits of paper and fragments of business cards with more pleas for assistance from Schulman, his skepticism turned to genuine concern. He swiftly returned to the visitor center and mobilized teams of rangers and law enforcement officers to navigate Rattlesnake Canyon. The search took them past the location where Kadikian was found lying next to his friend's body. Despite hours of searching, a search plane eventually spotted Schulman around 3 p.m., waving a t-shirt about a mile west of the exit trail. Her rescue came just in time as she was nearly out of water. Schulman explained that she had ventured into the canyon for a day hike, missing the exit trail. This incident appeared to validate the family's belief that better marked trails and prompt recognition of overdue hikers could have prevented the tragedy involving David and Rafi. Post-sentencing, the Coughlins even established a fund to equip the park with GPS systems for backcountry hikers to check out at the visitor center. As per prison authorities, Kadikian demonstrated exemplary behavior during his incarceration. His positive conduct resulted in a reduced sentence to 16 months. Released in November 2001, Kadikian made it home in time for Thanksgiving. Regrettably, David Coughlin would never return home. However, a portion of him found its way to what could have been his next destination on the journey to California. Rafi's journal entry expressing Dave's desire for cremation and scattering over the Grand Canyon's edge became a poignant reality. In August 2001, 2 years after his passing in Rattlesnake Canyon, the Coughlin family traveled to Arizona, honoring Dave's wish by dispersing his ashes into the majestic depths of the Grand Canyon. For Kenny Veach, his Mojave adventure would be a mystery. Kenny Veach, 47, is an experienced solo hiker and spent much of his free time exploring the Mojave and Great Basin deserts in Nevada and California. Kenny was described as a fun, happy, and clever individual who had a deep connection with the desert. Growing up just outside Las Vegas, he spent his childhood exploring the wonders of the Mojave Desert, collecting treasures from old ghost towns and appreciating the beauty and life within the seemingly barren landscape. Kenny's passion for the desert extended to his love for hiking. Known for his exceptional hiking abilities, he often embarked on solo trips far beyond cell coverage, exploring off-the-beaten-path locations. His hikes involved discovering deserted towns, collecting unique items, and embracing the wilderness. Kenny was no stranger to the unforgiving terrain of the Mojave. His passion for exploration led him to wander through the vast wilderness, seeking solace and adventure far from the reaches of civilization. A seasoned hiker with a knack for pushing his limits, he found joy in venturing off the beaten path, forging his own trails through the rugged canyons and towering mountains. Beyond the visible dangers, the Mojave harbors hidden threats and a plethora of abandoned mines in Nevada. These mines, often structurally unstable and lacking blueprints, present a serious risk to those exploring the desert. Veach, a fearless adventurer, embodied the spirit of exploration. His love for solo hiking, spelunking, or cave exploration, and pushing his limits in the Mojave, made him a unique individual. He embarked on most of these journeys alone, spending several days camping with minimal supplies and no GPS, compass, or maps. Occasionally, his girlfriend accompanied him. Many fellow hikers in the U.S. deserts criticized his trips as reckless due to the lack of necessary preparation and equipment. Despite this, Kenny claimed extensive experience in desert hiking, particularly in the Mojave area. Despite the risks, Kenny's adventurous nature led him to explore the mysteries hidden in the desert. It was during one of these solitary expeditions that Kenny stumbled upon the enigma that would consume his thoughts and later become the focal point of a gripping mystery. Kenny immersed himself in the vast expanse of the Mojave Desert, seemingly detached from the harsh realities of its unforgiving terrain. Renowned for his exceptional hiking abilities, Kenny took pride in challenging himself to cover vast distances with minimal water intake, often downplaying the supplies he carried, including a few ounces of water. Kenny delighted in pushing his limits, navigating challenging landscapes without appearing to rely on essential resources. His hikes, whether accompanied or solo, ventured off established trails into what he called wild hiking, an exploration of the desert without designated paths. On these excursions, lasting up to 9 hours together, or even multiple nights when Kenny ventured alone, he would traverse the arid expanses and ascend mountains, often covering 20 miles or 32 kilometers in a single journey. Sleeping high in the mountains during overnight trips, Kenny showcased his determination to reach the summit, regardless of the challenges. Undeterred, he would climb, spend the night, and descend through alternative routes, making each excursion a unique exploration of the desert's rugged beauty. It was on one of these remote, off-the-beaten-path hikes that Kenny claimed to have encountered a mysterious cave emitting an otherworldly force that would be the catalyst of an infamous hike in the coming months. Driven by an insatiable curiosity, Kenny returned home and shared his experience. Although not a prolific YouTube uploader, Kenny frequently commented on forums using the alias Snakebit McGee, earned from his risky habit of handling snakes and a past rattlesnake bite. In one post, he described solo hiking across remote mountaintops and exploring numerous caves, including one particularly remarkable cave. Kenny later shared his encounter with a cave resonating with otherworldly energy, featuring an M-shaped entrance in the remote wilderness. Unbeknownst to him, this revelation would trigger a series of events that puzzled and captivated those who followed his story. In June 2014, Kenny left a message on a video titled "Son of an Area 51 Technician," asserting, "That ain't nothing. I'm a long-distance hiker. One time during one of my hikes out by Nellis Air Force Base, I found a hidden cave. The entrance to the cave was shaped like a perfect capital M. I always enter every cave I find, but as I began to enter this particular cave, my whole body began to vibrate. The closer I got to the cave entrance, the worse the vibrating became. Suddenly, I became very scared and hightailed it out of there. That was one of the strangest things that ever happened to me." The M-shaped cave mentioned by Kenny in the YouTube comment was located in the Sheep Range, north of Las Vegas. This range spans north of Las Vegas, Nevada, encompassing both Clark and Lincoln counties within the Desert National Wildlife Refuge. The mountains reach their peak at Hayford Peak, standing at 9,912 feet or 3,021 meters above sea level, positioned between the Las Vegas Range to the east and the Desert Range to the west. The desert terrain that Kenny traversed was riddled with old mine shafts used by the military for chemical disposal, making it an isolated and challenging journey. This area was notorious for hosting drug addicts and dealers, even serving as a dumping ground for murder victims' bodies. Many YouTube users expressed skepticism and questioned the authenticity of Kenny's experience and the M-Cave discovery. A cautionary comment even warned Kenny against returning, stating, "No, do not go back there. If you find that cave entrance, don't go in. You won't get out." Despite the skepticism, Kenny's comment ignited widespread interest. Following his initial statement, numerous YouTube users encouraged Veach to revisit the cave, documenting his hike and providing evidence of his peculiar discovery. Kenny willingly accepted the challenge. Disregarding the caution, Kenny ventured back into the desert, armed with his Ruger and a camera. On October 18, 2014, he parked his vehicle in Joe May Canyon and explored the regions near Corkscrew Canyon and the valley around Gas Peak. In the expansive Mojave Desert, where the parched terrain extends endlessly beneath the blazing sun, Kenny Veach embarked on a journey that would unfold into a mysterious and captivating tale, intriguing the minds of many.
Right, all the way back out to the flat desert. Now, the camera doesn't pick this up very well, but it's a long way. And I just romp around out here, do some solo hikes and have some fun. My mission today is to just do a one-day hike. It's about a 10-hour hike. I got to still go over another ridge and then go all the way down a big crevice that's real narrow and gets kind of scary. I'm looking for a cave that I found, and I didn't have a sidearm when I was here before, and something about that cave just spooked me. Out of all the caves I've ever gone in, this one just made my body vibrate. The closer I got to it, the crazier my body felt, and I was like, all right, I'm not gonna go in there right now, but I'm coming back someday. And I talked to some people on YouTube, and I told them, hey, I'm coming out here, you know, because they kind of called my hand on it. So I don't know if there's going to be anything to it, but it might be interesting. If I can find it, I got to relocate it, and this is a big mountain range I'm in. and I'm on foot. You know, my truck's way out there. There's no roads, there's no trails. It's a pretty rough terrain. So hopefully I'll find it. It's shaped like a big M. It's a big cave that looks just like a gigantic M, and it's about as tall as I am and kind of narrow, and it's stuck on the side of a mountain. So I hope I can find it again. And if I do, I'm going in there. I'm gonna put on my light and take my gun out and walk in there, see if I find anything. We'll see.
And so, off Kenny went out to the place he claimed to have a mysterious experience. Armed with his pistol and his video camera, he set out to document his search for the M-shaped cave that had terrified him on his first encounter. Embarking on the M-cave hike, Kenny takes the viewers on a carefree and leisurely journey, anticipating the satisfaction of a well-deserved rest. The prospect of enjoying a refreshing beer at the end keeps him motivated to continue the trek. Kenny guides viewers through mountains and canyons, navigating drops with his patented adventurous excitement. Assessing the terrain, he contemplates scaling down bushes to continue the exploration. Encountering various wildlife from desert tortoises to bighorn sheep, Kenny revels in the unpredictability of nature. Pine nuts become a snack, abundantly available in the surroundings. Amidst the captivating scenery, Kenny expresses genuine enthusiasm, capturing moments that intrigue him. However, despite exploring numerous small caves along the way, Kenny acknowledges the absence of the specific M cave he sought. What Kenny produced on his journey was the now infamous M cave hike video, which he posted to his YouTube channel. Kenny's YouTube video chronicling his quest for the M cave garnered attention and a growing fan base. As the anticipation built, so did the questions. Was the cave a product of Kenny's vivid imagination, or did it hold secrets that transcended the boundaries of the known world? The comments flooded in, with individuals once again questioning Kenny's claims. They pointed out that he embarked on a quest to locate a cave, asserting its existence. However, upon sharing the video, critics noted the absence of any such cave. As social media interest in the M cave escalated, Kenny promised to make another attempt to find it. As the mystery deepened, so did the personal struggles in Kenny's life. Financial woes and the failure of his entrepreneurial endeavors weighed heavily on him. Desperation took hold, prompting him to invest not only his time and energy, but also a significant portion of his savings into inventions that seemed to elude success. Nevertheless, Kenny was determined to find the cave and prove to the masses that what he experienced was true. The increasing attention and emotional responses from viewers drove Kenny to continue exploring to find this cave. Then came the fateful day in November when Kenny set out on what would become his final adventure. Kenny's last known expedition took place on November 10th, 2014, when he set out to revisit the mysterious cave that had once unsettled him. Despite his familiarity with the desert, Kenny did not return. His disappearance left behind a trail of unanswered questions and a sense of unease that lingered in the air. Did he succumb to the perils of the treacherous desert? Or did he purposefully vanish into the vast unknown? At the beginning of the M Cave hike video Kenny posted before his disappearance, he is standing by an abandoned mine shaft, narrating some information about the cave he's seeking out. It was there that on November 22nd, 2014, search and rescue volunteers found Kenny's cell phone, indicating that he had, in fact, gone out searching for the cave again. Search and rescue teams, including Red Rock Search and Rescue, scoured the area around Kenny's parked car near Corn Creek Road. The discovery of his cell phone and coins near the entrance to a mine shaft raised more questions than answers. The investigation into the mine revealed that Kenny was not inside, leaving his whereabouts unknown. The trail would, unfortunately, go cold. The mysterious circumstances of his death fueled the internet with conspiracy theories of every shape and color. It was strange that Kenny decided to do another day hike without overnight camping equipment, as he said his previous trips had been long 10-hour hikes over difficult ground. But Kenny had been known to be reckless in the desert before. It would have left him little time to search the M cave had he found it again. He also left his video camera behind, which he used for his previous M Cave YouTube video. As Kenny's family grapples with the mysterious disappearance, authorities are left with numerous unanswered questions. The absence of Kenny's belongings, such as his backpack, sleeping bag, gun, and spelunking gear, deepens the mystery. Speculations arise about whether Kenny's adventurous spirit led him to an accidental tragedy or if there's a more ominous explanation. The mysterious vibrations Kenny reported feeling near the M Cave led to online theories linking the cave to secret government operations, drawing parallels to the storming of Area 51 event, where conspiracy theories about extraterrestrial life persisted. Speculation intensified. The history of Area 51, including atomic bomb testing and classified projects, contributed to the mystique surrounding the region. Decades of government silence regarding Area 51 fueled conspiracy theories, especially around alleged extraterrestrial technology. Recent revelations, such as the declassification of UFO footage by the U.S. Navy, add a layer of intrigue to the idea that Kenny may have stumbled upon government secrets. Kenny, a dreamer, aimed to live life on his terms by opening a decorating company and selling inventions, including a glow-in-the-dark polar bear and a new toilet paper roll holder. Did Kenny's departure from his long-standing full-time job, driven by a desire for autonomy, lead to unintended consequences? Despite aspirations of becoming his own boss, his entrepreneurial ventures faced setbacks, depleting a significant portion, if not all, of his retirement savings. Could the M Cave have been a part of an intricate plan for Kenny to orchestrate his own disappearance? Financial challenges, possibly leading to desperation, raise questions about whether Kenny's quest for the M Cave was a creative endeavor to generate income. The cave, Kenny claimed, was about as tall as him and somewhat narrow, both intriguing and frightening him. He contemplated returning with a gun, emphasizing the eerie resonance it held. If this was another attempt at a money-making venture, Kenny might have been onto something. The video showcasing his unsuccessful search for the M Cave garnered substantial attention, and Kenny seemed to relish the growing popularity on social media. At the time, his channel climbed to over 40,000 subscribers. Today, the M Cave hike has over 3 million views and counting. Could it be that Kenny orchestrated his own disappearance? Considerable interest surrounds Kenny's mysterious disappearance, with engaging in discussions about what might have transpired. Even years later, internet sleuths remain fixated, continuously contributing new comments and theories on platforms like Reddit and YouTube. Behind the veil of his energetic videos was a broken man. His girlfriend, Sherian Pilgrim, stated, "I asked him one morning, I said, 'Have you ever thought you might have depression?' He said, 'Yes, I've had depression issues for a long time.' He said, 'It's like not having an arm, you just get used to it.' So Kenny just wasn't emotionally okay at the time he was hiking when he disappeared." She would write a lengthy post in the M Cave video expressing her thoughts about what happened to him. She wrote, "I want you to know that I do not think Kenny had an accident. I believe he committed suicide. He battled depression for many years and would not take medication or see a doctor. He quit his job a little more than a year before he disappeared. The search for him was started within a couple of days of my call. Over 30 search and rescue team members searched 3 different times on foot. One helicopter flyover was done and there was no trace of Kenny or any of his camping things. They found his car in the area I told them it would be. They did find his cell phone by the mine shaft in the video. The mine shaft was only about a 4-hour hike from his car. It is my feeling he left it behind so that he could not be tracked from the GPS in it. He also did not take his video camera with him on this solo hike. It was left in his home, so he had no intention of filming anything. Kenny's house was his pride and joy, meticulously designed with custom homemade decor that reflected his imaginative and adventurous spirit. Despite the house being a beautiful expression of Kenny's passion, less than a year after quitting his job and facing financial struggles, he decided to sell it in a unique and unconventional way. Rather than a typical sale, Kenny proposed selling both the house and himself as a caretaker, allowing the buyer to keep the home exactly as he had created it. This unconventional approach hinted at possible financial troubles and a need for money. Friends noticed a change in Kenny's demeanor, suggesting he might have been facing serious issues in his life. His mental state seemed to be declining, with signs of depression and discussions about suicide. Kenny's family revealed that his father had committed suicide when he was younger, contributing to Kenny's ongoing struggles with depression. Despite his tough, playful exterior, friends and family began to see a more fragile and broken side of him. 4 years after Kenny's disappearance, a security camera captures footage of a break-in at a business owned by Kenny's brother. Some family members, including his daughter, believe the perpetrator resembles Kenny. Despite efforts to use facial recognition technology, the results are inconclusive due to the low quality of the video. In a video, the perpetrator breaks into a location swiftly, completing the act in approximately 42 seconds. Unlike typical burglars who would thoroughly search for valuable items, this intruder does not engage in any apparent ransacking. The video depicts the suspect climbing through a window, navigating around a counter, and placing their hands under a desk in 2 specific spots. Despite this, they seemingly don't find what they are looking for, dropping an object on the floor, retrieving it, and then making a swift exit with only an iPad as the stolen item. The possible reasons behind the suspect's behavior suggest they might have wanted to stay connected to the world by taking the iPad. Why did the perpetrator spend time searching under the desk, considering various possibilities, like other valuables in the store? The video suggests the suspect is familiar with the location. Kenny's sister-in-law, Susan Veach, believes the suspect's actions and physical resemblance bear strong similarities to Kenny's. The individual seems to be deliberate about what he's looking for. He doesn't ransack the place, and he looks in specific spots, expecting to find something. When his sister-in-law, Susan Veach, watches the video, she is confident it is Kenny. So confident that she sent the video to the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police. I've never heard anything back, so that's where we sit right now. Susan believes it's an elaborate hoax. I think he went out in the desert. I think it was planned, and for him to stage it. Left his cell phone right next to an abandoned mine. Who does that? Who falls in an abandoned mine? Oh, I'm gonna fall. I guess I better take my phone out and leave it on a rock because I feel like I'm gonna fall. This whole thing's staged. He could be living in Mexico, she said. Without a body or any evidence of what happened to Veach, the case of Kenny Veach is still open. His daughter is confident that her father is alive and is just going through the motions. When asked about what she would say if she heard from him, she stated, "I'm not really sure what I would say to him if he is still out there. I'd probably be a little bit upset, but I know that I'd be happy to know he's alive. If he wanted to be left alone, it's okay, as long as I know you're okay. I finally have an answer. Go ahead, leave it like that." What is the resolution to the mystery of Kenny Veach? The internet is rife with speculation. The narrative has undergone thorough scrutiny and investigation repeatedly, yet no definitive conclusion has emerged. His girlfriend believes Kenny might have indeed ended his own life. Conversely, there are those who assert that Kenny revisited M Cave, unearthing a sinister and perilous secret concealed within. It's likely that the unforgiving desert swallowed him up. For one German family, Death Valley would be their final resting place. On the morning of October 21st, 1996, a Death Valley ranger was scouring the desert during routine aerial surveillance looking for drug labs in the backcountry. Around 11 a.m., he saw something unexpected, a vehicle in the wash of Anvil Canyon, approximately 2 miles downstream from Willow Spring, the head of Anvil Canyon. This was extremely odd for several reasons. There wasn't a real or legal road down Anvil Canyon any longer. The second piece of oddness was that the vehicle appeared to be a standard passenger van. While Anvil Canyon could still be traversed by a competent 4-wheel drive vehicle, a 2-wheeled passenger van was totally inappropriate and couldn't be expected to get far in that canyon. It was a green, 1996 Plymouth Voyager van with California license plates. It was covered with considerable dust, as if it had been out there for some time. The van was clearly stuck in the wash, sunk up to its axles in the sand, with its 2 rear tires flattened and its left front tire also flat. Tracks left in the sand by the van suggested it had been driven at least 200 feet with flat rear tires. The van was locked, with no sign of the owner. The ranger noted the license number and reported it back to the Death Valley headquarters. A quick check on the license plate with the California Highway Patrol revealed the vehicle was reported stolen by the Los Angeles Police Department on September 10, 1996. This was the beginning of an intense investigation and search for the owner of the vehicle. The vehicle, owned by Dollar Rent-A-Car, had been rented to a group of 4 German tourists in Los Angeles on July 8, 1996. The vehicle had been due back to the rental agency in Los Angeles on July 26, but had never been returned. Heike Weber had reported her ex-husband Egbert Rimkus, 34, and their son Georg, 11, missing. They traveled with Egbert's girlfriend Cornelia Meyer, 28, and her 4-year-old son Max. They rented the minivan in Cornelia's name on July 8, 1996, after flying from Germany to Seattle and then to LA. They missed their flight from San Francisco back to Germany on July 26th. Investigators now knew who to look for. After searching the minivan and finding numerous items to investigate their whereabouts before, and possibly after they abandoned the minivan, they explored San Clemente, where the family had stayed, and the California coast, where they were planning to be. At some point, Egbert had $1,500 wired from his bank. Then they went to Las Vegas, where they stayed at the Treasure Island Resort. At this point, Egbert reached out to his ex-wife to borrow money, but she did not loan him any. On July 22nd, they continued on to Death Valley. Receipt records at the Furnace Creek Visitor Center show that on July 22nd, 2 copies of Death Valley National Monument Museum in German were sold. Egbert, Cornelia, Georg, and Max were never seen again. The recorded temperatures for the known dates of their visit to Death Valley were 124 degrees. The temps in Anvil Canyon were of cooler due to the higher elevation, but the area is remote and all of Death Valley is unforgiving, so the temperature difference likely didn't matter much. They were stranded with a limited amount of supplies in a foreign country, in an environment that not many, if any, would go out into willingly. A search and discovery began for the bodies. 2 miles east of the car in Anvil Canyon, 1 Bud Ice beer bottle was found in the sand next to a bush with what looked to be a mark where somebody had sat. Day 2 of the search, October 24th, brought additional teams and expanded the search area. Areas searched this day included more of Anvil Canyon, portions of Warm Spring Road and Butte Valley, Mengel Pass, the area adjacent to Warm Spring Road between the canyon mouth and West Side Road, and from the van location easterly to the head of Anvil Canyon at Willow Spring. There were also 2 helicopters involved this day, both for searching and shuttling supplies and searchers. There were 2 more days of searching the surrounding area before the search was eventually called off, and the family was presumed dead. Some German canteens had also been found 3 miles southeast of the van, but the exact location couldn't be determined, as the person who retrieved them never returned calls when contacted. This was truly a massive search performed by very competent search teams. There were over 45 searchers in the field, and 2 helicopters in the air at any given time, and 8 horses on the ground. It was estimated by a Death Valley spokesperson that 250 people were involved in the search at one time or another. Time went on, and formal searches ceased. The mystery of the Death Valley Germans became a phenomenon on the internet, and numerous theories were formulated by independent sleuths. The most popular theory was the Germans staged the incident to disappear and start new lives. This was given some momentum by Egbert's ex-wife, saying there were custody issues with their son. Also, co-workers of Egbert stated he talked about moving to Costa Rica, but staging a disappearance in a dangerous and remote environment like Death Valley in summer seemed highly unlikely. Further, Cornelia had a thriving business back in Germany and had no reason to disappear. Many believed there was a criminal element behind their disappearance, but Egbert's bank cards were left in the van and not taken. No activity was ever recorded on Cornelia's cards. The van, being the most valuable item, was abandoned and left locked, and no other vehicle tracks were seen, which rules out criminality. Online sleuths suspected they were German spies looking to infiltrate the China Lake Naval Weapons Center nearby. Even alien abductions were on the table. However, in 2009, search and rescuer Tom Mahood became intrigued by the story of the Death Valley Germans before joining the Riverside Mountain Rescue Unit in February of that year. To receive more training, Mahood took a course in man tracking in September 2009, which involves learning to follow the tracks of people rather than animals. The course would be headed by China Lake Mountain Rescue Group in the Death Valley area, which was involved in the search back in 1996. This was a great opportunity to ask more about the Germans' case "The missing Germans struck me as a case that simply had to have more to it," Tom stated. After pulling some strings and getting some detailed evidence and information from the investigation, he possessed all the information he was likely to obtain for the case. It was now time to head into the field and investigate. On Tuesday, October 27, 2009, Tom Mahood started his field investigation. The first field recon was a solo trek. With the GPS coordinates, he made it to the van's location. He marked off the approximate outline of the van with flags and took photos to match those in the Death Valley investigators' report. As I climbed up on the bank of the wash to the south to take overall pictures, it suddenly struck me that Egbert probably did the same thing and was at the same spot on the bank to get an overview of where they were. It was a very eerie feeling, Tom stated. He hiked around the area, coming upon the bush where the beer bottle was found. Covering a total of just over 12 miles that day, he explored numerous landmarks and tried to put himself in the mind of Egbert and what led him astray. 2 days after his trek, as Tom was looking over a map of Death Valley at home, Mahood had an epiphany. "I suddenly saw a way the Germans could have ended up in Anvil Canyon through a series of reasonable, honest mistakes, and why they might have set out for the south. I was also acutely aware that I might have done exactly the same thing were I in their situation. Is this in fact what happened? No one can know for sure, but it offered an explanation for their apparent actions and fits the known facts of the incident very well," he stated. Tom Mahood concocted a theory of what happened to the Germans that led to their death. This theory would lead Tom to search in areas that were ignored in 1996. Their rental van was due back in Los Angeles on July 26th, and they were returning to Germany the next day, the 27th. They may have been low on funds. The official reports indicate Egbert had some trouble getting money transferred to him earlier in the trip. He later requested additional money from his ex-wife in Las Vegas. This didn't occur, so money was perhaps an issue as they planned to travel to Yosemite via Death Valley. Arriving at the Death Valley Visitor Center on the 22nd, they may have been looking for a route to see interesting sights in the valley, with the ultimate goal being Yosemite. The Germans knew that with valley floor temperatures reaching 124 degrees Fahrenheit, they couldn't camp in the main valley, and with low funds, renting a room at Furnace Creek was out of the question. Hot weather camping could be tolerable in higher elevations, which would explain their choice of traveling on West Side Road. The maps they had available to them showed a route to the west, via Butte Valley and Mengel Pass, then north to the ghost town of Ballarat, and on to Yosemite. They weren't familiar with how rugged Death Valley roads in the backcountry could be, but understandable for them to believe they could do it. The Germans camped at Hanaupa Canyon on the night of July 22nd. They would have successfully navigated a considerable number of dirt road miles on West Side Road, which may have lowered their guard as to potential hazards. They also made it up Hanaupa Canyon in a two-wheeled minivan, which may have further bolstered their confidence in backcountry traveling. And they had 3 nights left before they had to be in Los Angeles. Just enough time for a quick trip through Yosemite, which they may have expected to reach by the next night, the 23rd. So early on the morning of the 23rd, to beat the heat, Egbert, Cornelia, and the kids left Hanaupa Canyon and continued south to Warm Spring Road and turned west. They would have experienced a very fine dirt road at that point, validating their overall plan. Reaching the Warm Spring camp, they hear hoping for some signs of life and get an idea of the road conditions further down the road. The camp was deserted, so they signed the register, indicating they were going over Mengel Pass. Continuing westerly toward Butte Valley, they encountered their first sections of truly questionable two-wheel drive road. By now, they would have invested considerable time getting in there. Thus, the pressure to continue westward would have mounted, so they chose to risk driving on the road. Coming upon the geologist cabin, it was deserted as well. They decided to take the USA flag from the cabin and continued on. As they approached Mengel Pass, it was obvious this was a four-wheel overland vehicle road, and their Plymouth minivan was incapable of traversing this track. They had to turn back. A dilemma now loomed. At this point, it was probably late afternoon. Going back through Warm Spring Road, it would have taken at least 2 hours for them to return to the paved road in the valley, and it was going in the opposite direction where they needed to be. They wanted to see Yosemite and be in LA on the 26th. The treacherous road between Butte Valley and Warm Springs they just traversed was likely a battle they didn't want to revisit. Egbert likely saw another route on the map, which would be a shorter route back down to the valley in the form of a road down Anvil Canyon. This will show to be a deadly mistake. So the Germans returned to the intersection at the geologist's cabin and turned right onto Anvil Canyon Road. The turn onto Anvil Canyon Road was likely premeditated and reasoned. The first couple miles down the road is drivable, along with sections inside the canyon, but the roads would turn harsh quickly. Egbert, seeing the road was more treacherous and the possibility of getting stuck was high, plus they need to get back to the main road, was driving faster than the minivan could handle with its low clearance. The rear tires explode, but he's still moving. Stopping at this point would guarantee being stuck in the backcountry. Egbert misjudged a fork in the road and went right when the road in fact veered left, heading toward the sandy wash. He tries to cut back left to join the main road, but the minivan comes to a halt, stuck in the gravelly sand of the wash inside Anvil Canyon. With temperatures in the hundreds and miles from civilization, they were in dire straits. In the middle of Death Valley backcountry, with a busted rental, limited rations, with kids in tow, and only days away from their flight back to Germany. Evidence suggests Egbert, seeing that they were in serious trouble, decided to make a trek to see if there were any signs of life down Anvil Canyon Road. With the sun bearing down on him, Egbert drinks a beer under a bush, providing shade during the very late afternoon. From this location is possible to see easterly down the canyon to the mouth of Anvil Canyon, and all the way to the east side of the main valley where the paved Badwater Road 16 miles away. This is when Egbert likely comes up with an extraction plan. Stranded in an area they haven't seen another human being for days, and were in need of assistance to extract their rental, the Germans were growing concerned. They had to make the flight in a few days. In examining their maps, Ballarat was many miles away, and with unknown services. Furnace Creek, the center of Death Valley, was way too far on foot. Heading down to Badwater Road on the valley's east side was in the area of the valley's legendary lethal heat. But there was another possibility. The Germans had likely seen many military installations in Europe, and they had certain commonalities. They all had fences that were regularly patrolled by armed personnel. The likelihood of patrols at the edge of a military installation would have seemed quite high. Egbert, looking at the maps available to him, would have seen the northern boundary of the China Lake Naval Weapons Center to be only about 9 miles to the south of them. Looking to the south shows what appears to be a simple traversable route south, up over a low pass in the mountains. Egbert believes this is a great plan, getting to the safety of a military installation and not descending down below sea level. The depth and shape of Death Valley influence its extreme heat. The valley is a long, narrow basin, 282 feet below sea level, yet is walled by high, steep mountain ranges. The clear, dry air and sparse plant cover allow sunlight to heat the desert surface. Heat radiates back from the rocks and soil, then becomes trapped in the valley's depths. Heated air rises, cools before it can rise over the valley's mountain walls, and is recycled back down to the valley floor. These pockets of descending air are only slightly cooler than the surrounding hot air. As they descend, they are compressed and heated even more by the low elevation air pressure. These moving masses of superheated air blow through the valley, creating extremely high temperatures. What Egbert didn't know was U.S. desert military installations are seldom manned by military personnel. Security is provided more by vastness rather than fencing. After formulating his plan at the bush, Egbert headed back to the van. The group then probably spent the night at the van, and then early the next morning locked the vehicle and headed east down Anvil Canyon to a little past the Bottle Bush, then turned south toward the China Lake Naval Base boundary in the hope of rescue. The right option was probably heading back to the geologist's cabin for water and shelter. But the Germans had to get back for their flight, and there was no guarantee of receiving help in time. So heading to the military installation seemed to be the best option for the quickest extraction. So Egbert Rimkus, his son Georg, Cornelia Meyer, and 4-year-old Max set off down the canyon road to their impending doom. With this plausible theory in mind, on November 11, 2009, Tom Mahood and friend and colleague Les Walker went searching for the German family and set out to Death Valley that morning. From the Bottle Bush, they headed south in the direction Tom believed the German may have trekked. With no luck the first night, they camped and spent a cold night in Death Valley. Early that morning, they woke up and decided to split up to cover more area, keeping in contact via radio. Sometime later, Les contacts Tom to inform him he found a wine bottle. Then he radios again to inform him he found a piece of a daily planner in German. As he arrives at the scene, Mahood clearly sees skeletal remains. Les finds Cornelia's wallet. Upon further search, they found more bits of a daily planner in German as well as business cards from places that they had visited on their trip to the States. They found one empty bottle that, when formally collected and investigated, was determined to match the other bottles investigators found back at the minivan in 1996. They knew this was enough to give to authorities, so they rushed back to the truck and floored it back to Furnace Creek before it closed at 5 p.m. They reached their destination and informed authorities of what they found. They brought Cornelia's wallet with them as confirmation. They were put on the phone with an Inyo County Sheriff's Office investigator to answer some questions, and were requested to stay overnight to aid investigators in the morning. The next day, they were directed to an airfield where Inyo search and rescue personnel, officers from the Inyo County Sheriff's Office, an FBI agent, and a Seahawk helicopter were awaiting them. They flew to the site where authorities collected the evidence at the site. Later on, after DNA analysis of the skeletal remains, they were able to ID Egbert and Cornelia. On December 6, 2010, Inyo County sheriffs found remains that seemed to be of a child or children, as well as some small shoes, but not enough DNA to positively connect them with the children. The case was essentially closed, and the fate of the Germans was put to rest. The following theory is a hypothetical scenario of how the Germans' last days may have gone. Making the trek south of the van toward the military installation, what was thought to be a somewhat easy hike is not the case. They're higher in elevation, but it is still a scorching 100 degrees with no shade from the Death Valley sun. Kids suffer from the heat faster than adults, so it's really taking its toll on Georg and Max. They can't go on any longer. Egbert, seeing his family suffering, sees a small bluff up ahead. They walk towards the bluff and settle down. The small overhang provides some relief from the beating sun, but it's still hot, and they had nothing but alcohol, a few snacks, and a couple of bottles of water. Egbert tells Cornelia he's going to the military installation, and for them to stay put, and he'll be back with help. Although he's exhausted, the rest and shade help some. He drinks a beer and continues the next 4 miles to the base. Egbert arrives at the military installation and sees no one is around. Devastated, Egbert turns around and arrives back at the bluff to see his family in despair. But he's way too exhausted to go anywhere and flops down next to them. So the family settles down for the night, hoping that rescue may come. But they're in a remote part of the valley where traffic is rare. Egbert knew unless a plane flies over or maybe an off-roader comes by, the chances of rescue were slim. No one knew where they were. Max was not in good shape. While deserts are notorious for cold nights, a summer in Death Valley sees only a drop into the mid-80s during the night. As the sun arises, comes the extreme heat as well. Egbert and Cornelia give all the rations and the rest of the water to the children, but it's not enough. They now only have wine to drink. The children may not make it through the day if a rescue does not come. The butte only provides some relief for part of the day, so the sun is bearing down on the family. The first stage of hyperthermia begins. Sweating can no longer keep their bodies at a manageable temperature, then heat cramps. When sweating ceases, bodies start to swell and muscles start to seize. For Max and Georg, the process to die of heat stroke is snowballing more quickly than for Egbert and Cornelia. Then heat exhaustion. You start to feel lethargic and cycle in and out of alertness. And last comes heat stroke. Cycling in and out of consciousness, there's often an altered mental state. At this point, some people are no longer aware they're in pain or discomfort. The cells in vital organs start to swell, they burst and die. Infants and children up to 4 years of age and the elderly 65 years of age and older are the most vulnerable to heat-related illness. This process happens quickly, sometimes within 2 or 3 hours. The first one to perish is Max. Cornelia is devastated and Egbert is rife with guilt and shame. It was his idea to take this route. And now, Cornelia's son is dead. With any energy they had, they dug out a small grave, not too deep because they were exhausted, and buried Max. Egbert is now worried about Georg. He's 11, so hasn't succumbed yet, but he's not looking good. The night comes and Egbert and Cornelia do everything to comfort him, but they know this may be their final hours. The three make it through the night, but the heat does not let up. All of them are suffering, looking for anywhere to lie down away from the sun. Georg has now passed on. Egbert, with the last of his energy, grabs his son and apologizes. Egbert has now lost all will to live. Since he used a lot of energy to go to the military installation and gave most of the rations to the others, he's now on his last legs. Hours later, Egbert passes on as well. Now Cornelia is left alone. She's laying down and doesn't have the energy to react to Egbert's passing. She knew she was next. It was still scorching, alone, with 3 dead bodies around her. With the unrelenting heat bearing down on her, Cornelia takes her last breath. With the evidence of the skeletal remains, along with the Mahud theory and no signs of foul play, it's the logical conclusion the Germans died of heat stroke under the small bluff. Likely they suffered for a few days after being stranded in Death Valley. If you're strong, truly strong, not just in body but in mind, you can face the darkness within when pushed to the brink. You can push through the fear, the doubt, the exhaustion. You can outlast the wild and come out the other side. But make no mistake, it will demand everything from you. Every ounce of strength, every bit of cunning, and every shred of willpower. Out here, survival isn't just a battle against nature, it's a battle against yourself. When hope is fading and you feel close to the brink, you must keep pushing forward, because you never know what's waiting just ahead. Keep your companion motivated and hopeful. You must fight for everything that matters: your family, your friends, and most importantly, your precious life. When you fight to your last breath, you become something greater, more resilient, and far stronger than before. That's what survival in the wilderness forges. Remember, you can persevere. You're far stronger than you realize. The crucible will try to break you, but you'll stare death in the face and battle to your very last breath. Heed these words so you can get through an outdoor disaster. Thank you for watching. Want more outdoor disaster content? Check out these stories I believe you'll enjoy.